Can you play more than one character at the same time? And if the answer is yes, which it is, how do you do that? Hello, my name is Guy, and you're watching How to Be a Great Player. Well, my fellow great players, this is the video where we look at, can you play more than one character in the same game? This was a question that was posed on the Discord server, and it's a rather interesting one, and I believe that you certainly can do it. But there are a few things that if you have in your arsenal as a role player, you will be able to pull it off better than somebody else. And a lot of these lessons come from my own exploits as not only a GM, but also as a player who has on occasion played more than one character at a time. So how do we do that? Well, as far as I'm concerned, there are, as usual, three areas that we should be looking at. Personality, metagame, that's right, I said it, metagame, and performance. Oh, Horatio, wherefore art thou? That kind of performance. Don't be afraid. We are here, all of us, because we're playing multiple characters to keep you safe. So when we then look at... Let me click in the right place. When we look at personality, she's got a fantastic personality as long as she stands in the dark. The personality. How do we make our personalities of our different characters work? Well, they should be different. I know that goes without saying, but I said it, so it's said. They need to be different. The characters need to be different. How do we make them different, I hear you ask? Well, that's what this whole video is about, isn't it? But we need to have in our mind that they are different. We need to have in our mind that this is a dwarf and he is different from the elf. How is he different from the elf? Well, he's a male, she's a female. He likes drinking songs, she drinks water because that's the healthy option. I'm creating extremes here. So they're different. Personality-wise, he's jovial, he's bubbly, he's welcoming. She is jovial, she's a happy-go-lucky hippie who loves to hug trees. I'm not making stereotypes here, I'm just throwing out whatever comes to my head. She's a happy-go-lucky hippie, he's a happy-go-lucky drunkard. That's how there's not necessarily a huge difference, but there is still a difference. They're not both happy-go-lucky drunkards. That would be a little bit confusing. So we make them different. We give them different goals. She, as a happy-go-lucky hippie, is out to basically raise money so she can buy land and start her own nature reserve. He wants to raise money so that he can continue drinking and whoring and doesn't really care about the future. His goal is to get his next beer. Her goal is to raise a nice nest egg with which she can then go and buy as much land as she possibly can. Very different goals. Are they unaligned? No, they're not. Now, this is where I don't want you to get confused with the next word, so don't look at the next word. Yeah, I'm going to try and block it. Are the goals unaligned? No, they're not. They both want to make money. They both want to raise money. So that means that they can work together. So the goals need to be separate, but same. That makes sense. So they both want to get money. They both want to get the prince back. They both want to save the princess. They both want to fly the starship. It doesn't matter. As long as their goals, the outcome of those goals or the expression of those goals might be different, but as long as the goal is the same, that's important. You don't need to engage in your own inter-party, inter-player, interpersonal conflict with yourself. Don't set yourself up for that. That's a waste of time. So their goals need to be similar. Their alignment can be dissimilar. Their actual character alignment. This one could be a good character. This one could be a more evil character. But their outcome is still the same. Their goal is still the same. So their alignments can be different. Having the alignment being the same, it removes a little bit of tension, a little bit of role-playing opportunity for you by having them in agreement all the time. Having them disagree with one another does create for a rather interesting moment, but you have to avoid goleming it. So, and we're going to talk about that later. But the idea is that if they have alignments that are similar, there's less role-playing. If they have alignments that are different, there is more role-playing opportunities that will come through. So those are the different ways in which you should handle the personality of your characters. Metagaming! I said metagaming. Yes, I did. Metagaming is, of course, where you are thinking as a player outside of the box. You're already playing two different characters, so you are already metagaming. That's the first step you need to take to accept that in order to play multiple characters, you have to metagame. Now, that means cohesion. That means that when you are working with your fellow player who's also playing multiple characters, you need to keep the party together. Do not split the party. It's way beyond anyone to keep track of, oh wait, she, the tree hugger, is off on that group and the dwarf is off on that group, and they're not going to have a link to one another. That's going to be very difficult. Split your party, your personal 2-player party, and the other player's 2-player party. Split those up. Yes, that can happen. To a degree, but they all need to work together. So you need to have cohesion. You also need to have a single voice. Now, the reason why I say a single voice is not as in they need to sound the same. You can put on different accents for them. But what I mean is that these two individuals, they cannot, of your own choosing, argue with one another to the point that they don't act. That is just a complete amount of crazy. She might disagree with the approach that the dwarf is taking. He wants to kill the dragon, she wants to save the dragon. But once the call to action has been made, they will work together regardless of the fact that they disagree with one another. They will act as a single voice. And the reason for that is because you don't want to Gollum it. Now, in the films, The Lord of the Rings, they came out almost 20 years ago. That's terrifying to someone like me who remembers it just the other day. When they came out, there was a character named Gollum, and Gollum basically in the films had this split personality. One was a happy, helpful kind of creature, as far as a miserable, depressed wretch could be. The other was a murderous, treacherous creature, as far as a depressed, miserable creature could be. And there's a very famous scene where Gollum has a conversation with himself, and he talks nicely in one voice and horridly in another voice. It was a fantastic moment in the film. Unless you are a great actor, you're going to be sitting at the table talking to yourself, arguing with yourself, trying to convince yourself that your other self is better or is correct. It gets crazy. It really does. So, those are the moments that I'm advocating you just go. The elf and the dwarf argue like cat and dog for 15 minutes until eventually they look up and they say, all right, we will journey with you. You don't have to go into the minutiae of what they're arguing about, because otherwise you're going to be saying, I think you're an absolutely ridiculous dwarf. Oh, is that right? Well, you're completely mad hugging all those trees. We're not going to go and save the dragons. I think we should save the dragons. We really should, you know. It's the right thing to do, and they haven't really done anything against the town. Haven't done anything against the town? You get my drift. It becomes very much a performance piece rather than anything else. So don't Gollum it, unless you want to. Now, performance-wise, and this is something that I know a lot of people are nervous about, because they go, "Oh, I'm not an actor. I'm not an actor. I don't do the voices. I don't do anything like that." Absolutely none of these require you to be an actor or a performer. I've made sure of that so that anybody can do these. Quirks. The tree hugger, perhaps her quirk is that she always has stray hair that drifts down into her face. You don't have to constantly act as if you're brushing hair out of her face. That's not what I'm advocating. What I'm saying is that you could say her name is Arieth, and you're engaging with someone else or with an NPC. Arieth brushes the hair that's fallen in her face aside and she says, I think we should save the dragons. It's one sentence and suddenly she's come alive. She's got that hair strand that hangs there. And when she goes shopping and she looks for a headband, it makes more sense. So give them quirks, give them different quirks. Don't have the dwarf now brushing long hair out of his eyes as well. Perhaps he can stroke his beard, so they have a connection. They both have hair stuff, but it's different hair stuff. Give yourself some props. Be careful if you use a pen as a pipe. I remember when I used to play a wizard who had a pipe, I would sit sucking on my pen. It doesn't require any acting to suck on a pen. Be aware that the back of the pen is not sealed and ink will flood your mouth after a while. This leads to a very unpleasant taste. It's a sort of a metal plastic, it's just absolutely horrid, and it gets stuck between your teeth for days, and then there's questions, and it's just... So if you're going to use a prop, and I suggest you use props, so perhaps the prop for Arieth might be that she has a stone that she sort of bounces in her hand. Well, you have hundreds of stones on your table. Just to have her, whenever you're playing Arieth, going, you know, if we save those dragons, I think that that will be a much better course of action than if we don't. Well, I see what you're saying, but I'm not sure, actually. He taps his pipe on the wooden stump. That was done by a dragon. That's rather dangerous, isn't it? Yes, rather dangerous, actually. So by having props, it allows you to visually demonstrate, without acting, demonstrate the character that is currently talking. Now, someone asked, can they make masks for their different characters, and you put the mask up and you talk through the mask? Yes, you can. I, though, believe that the face and the body is your method of expression. As was famously said, my body is my tool. Your body should be your tool of expression. So by hiding behind a mask, you're removing that sort of facial expression and that immediate readability that your other players will get from you as you're doing these different performances. So I'd always go with a prop. And then positions. There's nothing stopping you from going, well, I think I agree with you. Absolutely. I agree with the NPC. You know, those dragons should actually be saved. I really think that they should be. Nothing stopping you from changing position to indicate who's talking. These can, of course, lead to some funny exchanges where you're swinging from here to there and you forget who's where and you put the pipe in your ear and you throw the dice into your face. Those can happen, but generally speaking, they don't. So these are performance things that you can do to really help separate your character. Now, you've got all your character sheets in front of you, and you've got all the data that goes with that. So that should help you as well. But by doing these things, by giving them a personality, by realizing that you have to metagame, and by giving them a performance, you can really create these memorable characters, and it will feel as if you had a party of 4 or 6 or however many you want to actually include. Can you do more than 2? Well, if you've been GMing for a long time, you're used to NPCing lots of different individuals. I think that would be a hard stretch for anyone, though, to do more than 2 and try and get a meaningful experience out of it. Those are my thoughts. How do you play more than one character? Do you play more than one character, and do you allow it to happen? I know certainly at my table, if someone says, oh, can I play 2 characters? I go, I've got a party of 4. I don't need more characters running around. Yeah, rather not. Let's not necessarily do that. On the other hand, I do run a game where I've only got 1 player. Well, 2 players now, thankfully. And there were lots of NPCs. So I was metagaming 4 or 5 different NPCs at the same time. And that almost was like playing multiple characters. None of them, I feel, have a tremendous amount of depth, and certainly not as much depth as would have had if we had players who were playing multiple characters. So there's always a time and place for it. Anyway, until next time, I wish you and yours the happiest of gaming.